Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you all for joining us here this morning. My name is Derek Rowland. I'm the Deputy Chief of Staff and Director of Communications to the Honourable Lisa MacLeod, Ontario's Minister of Heritage, Sport, Tourism and Culture Industries. I want to thank you all for joining us here this morning for our first regional webinar outlining some of the supports offered by the government as a result of COVID-19. The Minister wanted to use this opportunity to make sure that we're communicating directly with you and putting you in touch with the appropriate resources so that you can get support from your Ontario government when you need it most. We've got a great lineup of speakers here for you today to walk through the current supports that are available. But before we begin, I'm going to turn it over to Minister MacLeod for some opening remarks. Minister, over to you.
Okay, thanks very much, Derek, and thanks everyone for joining us here today. I'd like to recognize my colleague, MPP Goldie Gamari, who will say a few words after I speak, but I wanted to thank you all for taking the time. I know this has been a very rough pandemic. We just recently marked the one-year anniversary when the first COVID cases came to Ontario. And as my team at the ministry will tell you, that was the day that we pivoted our operations to plan for what we expected to be a SARS-like pandemic. Never in a million years, I think, would we have expected this to last as long as it has and to affect us as deeply as it has, still with an indeterminate period of time as we are going through another stay-at-home order and lockdown across the entire province. Prior to Christmas, when we recognized that we would be going into lockdown, the ministry had a webinar similar to this, outlining the supports for small businesses and not-for-profits that were available and whom were affected within this ministry in our sectors. So today you're obviously going to be hearing from Steve Harlow, my ADM in our Sports and Recreation Division, as well as Kevin Finnerty, who is our ADM with respect to tourism and culture, to outline some of the regulatory changes that have occurred throughout the pandemic, particularly as it relates to this most recent lockdown. In addition, they'll be highlighting two areas of support for not-for-profits and the arts sector. And so that will be an additional $100 million investment into the Ontario Trillium Foundation over the next 2 years to support not-for-profits, sport organizations, and other and municipalities and First Nations. In addition to $25 million that will be going in addition to the existing arts budget to the Ontario Arts Council, which will be broken down by $24 million to core cultural institutions across the province and $1 million in relief for our artists. We will be joined by colleagues over at the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Economic Development, Trade and Job Creation, as well as the Ministry of Energy and MGCS, the Government and Consumer Services. They'll be outlining the up to $20,000 small business grant, the 1,000 PPE grant that was outlined earlier in the pandemic for PPE for small businesses, in addition to the property tax and energy bill relief. We will be concluding this session with a demonstration on how to go through the portal to access these important programs so that you can get your cash and support your small business or your not-for-profit. We are going to be doing a Q&A throughout this, but it will be by email and you will be receiving responses in real time. I recognize that there is a chat box here. We would prefer to go to minister.macleod@ontario.ca. Again, that is minister.macleod@ontario.ca in order for us to both track the questions that are coming in case there is a consistent issue that many people are raising, so we can provide that to our ministerial colleagues. Olivia O'Ray, my policy advisor and strategic planner, will be on the other side of that right now to answer any questions you may have and any additional support you may need. So again, thank you all very much for joining this. This is again the first of 13. I was happy to do this at home in my home area. And I know that there's many people here from Barrhaven and Bell's Corners and throughout the entire city of Ottawa. And so I'm going to conclude now. And before we hand it over to my ADMs to talk about sector specific supports and issues with respect to heritage, sport, tourism and culture industries, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague and friend, Goldie Gamari, the MPP for Carleton, to say a few words. Thanks, Goldie.
Thank you very much, Minister, and thank you for organizing this. I know how important it is. The work that you're doing, you're working tirelessly and supporting businesses across Ontario. And, one of the things that I'm hearing most from people in my riding in Carleton is how difficult it has been for the tourism and culture sector, having been hit by COVID. So, everything that you've been doing is just so critical, and the support that you're providing for businesses, I think is really what's going to make the difference to help us all get through this. So I'm really happy that you're doing this, and I'm really excited to share this information with everyone, because I think this is exactly the kind of support that small businesses need to get through this difficult time. So thank you again, and I look forward to everyone's feedback.
Thank you very much, Goldie. And I'll now pass it over to Kevin and Steve to walk us through.
Okay. Good morning, Minister. Good morning, MPP Gamari. Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Finnery. I'm Assistant Deputy Minister of Heritage, Tourism and Culture. I'll be walking you through some of the changes that have taken place as a result of the regulations, and I'll be joined in this presentation by my colleague Steve Harlow, who will come up next and talk about the sports and recreation sector. So if we move, so basically what I want to do is just outline for you what the key changes were to the province-wide lockdown that has now been in place since the end of December, with some additional measures that were announced on Tuesday, January the 12th. So we move forward to the next slide, please. That would be great. And let's go to the next slide after that. So in terms of the impacts on specific sectors, and I'll walk through this relatively quickly because I think some of this is well known to many of you. When it comes to meeting and event spaces, at this present time, they are only allowed to open for the operation of childcare centers and authorized recreational skill building programs, for court services, for government services, selected mental health and addiction services, social services, and collective bargaining, as long as no more than 10 people are permitted to occupy the rented space. And of course, contact information must be collected from every person in these spaces, with the exception of court services. Short-term rentals, i.e. cottages and cabins, Airbnbs, etc., only need to be provided for individuals who are in need of housing. And previously made reservations for short-term rental accommodation are permitted only if the individual is in need of housing. Ice fishing hutch can be rented for day use and for use by members of the same household, with limited exceptions. And of course, none of these conditions affect an Aboriginal or treaty right. For restaurants, bars, and other food and drink establishments, they are closed and only allowed to do takeout, drive-through, and delivery. And this does include a sale of alcohol. Next slide, please. In terms of services, so hotels, motels, lodges, cabins, cottages, resorts, and other shared accommodations, including student residences, are allowed to open. However, indoor amenities like pools and fitness centers must be closed. Seasonal campgrounds can be made available only for individuals in need of housing, and only for trailers and recreational vehicles in need of housing are permitted to be there. And you'll see some of the other detailed requirements here, including having the need to be able to access electricity, water service, and facilities. Recreational amenities must be closed, and other areas of the campground must be closed as well. For our creative industries or media industries, sound recording can operate, some music production, music publishing, and music distribution allowed to operate. Commercial film and television production, including all supporting activities, is allowed to operate. However, no studio audiences. A film or television production can take place in any location or any business or any place that is otherwise required to be closed, a reflection of the fact that when a film and television production is taking place, it's deemed to be a workplace. No more than 10 performers may be permitted on the film or television set at any one time. And there must be requirements to allow for social distancing on set. People who are providing hair and makeup services must wear the appropriate PPE. And if there's any musical performances or any singing, there must be separation, as well as the use of plexiglass or some other impermeable barrier. Film and television post-production, including animation, is allowed. Book and periodical production distribution is allowed. Commercial and industrial photography is allowed. However, retail studios are not open. Interactive digital media businesses, including computer and video games, are allowed to open. Next slide, please. Concert venues, theaters, and cinemas, including drive-in and drive-through events, they're closed for all purposes. So that includes recording or broadcasting of performances. Libraries can only open for contactless curbside pickup and return or for delivery for a limited array of services, including childcare, mental health, and addiction services. Materials that are returned to libraries must be disinfected or quarantined for an appropriate period. And of course, if someone is entering the library for permitted services, contact information must be gathered. Museums and cultural amenities are closed. Horse racing is only allowed for training, not for racing. Nightclubs and other strip clubs are permitted to open only if they operate as a food or drink establishment, subject to the same conditions as restaurants and bars. Next slide, please. Zoos and aquariums, amusement parks and water parks and tourism guide services are all closed. Zoos, however, may open for the purpose of caring for animals. Next slide, please. And I'll now turn it over to my colleague, Steve Harlow, to talk a little bit about the sport and recreation sector. Over to you, Steve.
Thanks, Kevin. So with respect to facilities for indoor or outdoor sport and rec facilities, they are all closed with a couple of exceptions. Some of you may have been watching some of the NHL activity. And the NHL is one of 7 leagues that is permitted to submit a plan to the CMOH, Chief Medical Officer of Health, to demonstrate if they can operate their league successfully during this stage. Similarly, those people training to compete for the upcoming 2021 and 2022 Olympic and Paralympics have an exemption to allow them, both athletes and para-athletes, to train and compete for the next Olympics. And those are the exceptions to what facilities can open. Community centers, really only for childcare services or addiction services, as Kevin earlier talked about. And all of these are subject to conditions such as, the information about the person, the maintaining 2 meters physical distancing, all of the normal conditions that would apply. With respect to outdoor recreational amenities, you cannot use an indoor or outdoor recreational amenity that's required to be closed. However, there is a number that can open, and as long as you can maintain your 2 meters physical distancing, then you can access these recreational amenities. And there's the list there on the field. So it's parks and recreational areas, skate parks, frisbee golf locations, cycling, bike trails, horse riding, shooting ranges, outdoor ice rinks, tobogganing hills, snowmobile, cross country, ice skating and snow trails. Downhill ski are closed. We do have a working round table with a number of the ski operators as per the minister's request to demonstrate that once we're confident that it's safe to potentially ski again, how they can operate successfully going forward. And in each of these cases, there'll be public health and workplace safety measures required. Next slide, please. Those facilities I just referred to may only open if the person entering the facility maintains a 2 meter distance, and that's obviously excluding same household. Team sports or games are not to be practiced or played within the amenity, and only those locker rooms or change or washrooms to provide first aid. And that's the limitations that are currently in place for the sport and recreational facilities, which is, obviously, challenging for those of us who love to be active and physically recreate and go to gyms and go to facilities for playing hockey. So this is what is currently able to open in a safe way for the population. Next slide. Kevin?
Okay, thank you, Steve. So as the minister said at the beginning of her presentation, I just want to take you through 2 sources of additional funding for the tourism sector, the sports sector, and the culture sector. So I want to walk you through first the community building fund. The budget that the government tabled in November announced $100 million over 2 years for a community building fund to support community tourism, cultural, and sport organizations, which have been experiencing financial pressures due to the pandemic. And so the funding support would be available to not-for-profit organizations and municipalities. The program will be administered by the Ontario Trillium Foundation, and it will have 2 streams. One will be supports for local community tourism, heritage, and culture not-for-profits like museums, theaters, fairs, cultural institutions to help sustain their operations in the short term and help create new attractions, experiences, and events. As well, there will be funding for municipalities and not-for-profit sport and recreation organizations to make investments in infrastructure rehab, and renovation in order to meet new public health protocols and local community needs. And that will be the second stream. As I said, the Ontario Trillium Foundation has been selected to deliver this program, very well positioned to deliver funding to municipalities, Indigenous communities, as well as the entire not-for-profit sector, very strong relationships with sector stakeholders, massive amounts of experience delivering grants on behalf of the government in a very timely manner. Trillium Foundation has a really, really good system in place for processing and evaluating funding applications, tracking and reporting on results. We are just finalizing the details of this particular fund, and so you will see more information on it in the coming days. I go to the next page, please. The second fund that the minister talked about was emergency funding for core arts organizations. Once again, the budget announced one-time emergency funding of $25 million for Ontario's arts institutions to help cover operating losses that they've incurred as a result of the pandemic. As you can imagine, these organizations rely heavily upon in-person attendance, so their bottom line has been dramatically impacted by the pandemic. This funding will help them remain solvent and prepare for that time when they can fully reopen their facilities, resume their programming, and welcome back visitors and as well as their entire audiences. The Ontario Arts Council will deliver this funding based on their long history and their expertise in funding Ontario's arts sector. The Ontario Arts Council has very good systems in place for processing, evaluating funding applications, for tracking on reporting our results. Once again, the program details of this are being finalized, and we'll be in a position to announce more details in the coming days. So as you'll see, lots of work's being done behind the scenes to be able to get more funding out to individual sectors. So, on behalf of Steve, I just want to thank all of you for listening to our part of the presentation, and I will turn it back now to Derek, please.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Thank you, Steve, for taking time out of what I know is already a very busy day for you guys, and will be a very busy week ahead as well. Appreciate you walking us through what the current lockdown measures mean for our sector stakeholders across the province, and particularly giving a heads up on those two funding opportunities as well. So the $100 million Community Building Fund, which is going to be operating through the Ontario Trillium Foundation, as well as the $25 million for core arts institutions through the Ontario Arts Council. As both Steve and Kevin mentioned, those funding opportunities will be available in the very near future. We're just in the final stages of finalizing the policy for it, and then it'll be rolled out. But what we want to make sure we communicate to you now is opportunities that are currently available to receive financial support through the Ministry of Finance, who have done a fantastic job pulling together a bit of a presentation here for us today, which we'll currently walk you through it now. So with that, I'll turn it over to Matt to put up the presentation from the Ministry of Finance.
Thank you for that. So it's going to provide a kind of a high-level overview of the grant, and hopefully be a helpful scene setter before folks take you through the detail of the portal. So turning to slide 2, government announced the move to a broader province-wide shutdown on December the 21st, and at the same time announced that it would be introducing a new Ontario Small Business Support Grant in recognition of the impact that the shutdown would have on Ontario small businesses. It's worth noting that this new grant is over and above other existing programs that the province has put in place, such as the property tax and energy rebates, or the support that's available to businesses through many federal programs. So the new grant will provide a minimum of $10,000 and up to $20,000 for eligible small businesses that are expected to experience a minimum of a 20% decline in revenue. So every small business will be able to use the support to navigate the challenging times in whatever makes the most sense for them. I think all of you on this call will have a much better sense of some of the ways in which businesses will be able to use this support. And there are 3 basic eligibility requirements on the bottom of the slide, which are probably a helpful framework to use when thinking about eligibility for the program. So first, the business needs to be either closed or significantly restricted by the provincial shutdown. And we have a list of businesses or categories of businesses that meet that eligibility later on in the slide deck. And the portal, of course, in the application will make that clear. Second, this is targeted at small businesses. And so the definition that is being used for this program is common in other contexts. And it's having less than 100 employees. So basically between 0 and 99. employees at the enterprise level. And finally, the business needs to be able to demonstrate that it will experience a minimum of 20% revenue decline as a result of the shutdown. The primary way that this will be measured is by comparing April 2020 with April 2019 monthly revenue. But there are alternate measurements in place for businesses who were maybe established outside this window. And we also have a slide to show you what some of those comparative points will be. And of course, applications for the new program opened today. So the portal that folks will take you through is now available for applications. Next slide, please. So there's just a couple of examples on this slide, which we thought might be helpful to take folks through so you can kind of understand how those parameters that I just walked through sort of tangibly work their way through the program. So we have kind of two companies, Company A, Company B on the bottom of the slide there. And I think we just assume that both these companies meet the business eligibility test in terms of being shut down or significantly restricted. And if you look at Company A on the left, so you'll see that it says there it'll experience a monthly loss of $20,000, which is equivalent in their context to a 25% decline in revenue. So that means they meet the 20% revenue test, and they will be eligible for a $20,000 grant, which is also the maximum, but it fully offsets the revenue decline that's been presented by the company. And then on the right, there's a monthly loss of $15,000, which is also 20%. So they meet the 20% threshold for the decline, and that entire amount, $15,000, would be funded. So turning to slide 4 to talk a little bit about the revenue comparators. So as I mentioned before, businesses that perhaps were not in operation in April 2019 will still be able to calculate a revenue decline using various alternative revenue decline comparators. And the goal here is to make sure that all small businesses will be able to be eligible to apply for the grant. As you see, the chart on this slide shows the different comparators. So I think one thing you'll notice when you look at the comparators is what the program is trying to capture is 2 points in time, one where the business would have been kind of in normal operations versus when they would have been experiencing some kind of public health restriction. So for example, if you look at the second row in the chart, this is for a small business that went into operation after April 2019, and so as a result couldn't use that more general comparator. So sometime between May 2019 and January 2020, the revenue comparator that they would use is February 2020 and April 2020. And when you think back, February was sort of a pre-pandemic, pre-lockdown, provincial lockdown month, whereas April, the province was in a lockdown scenario. And so as a result, it's meant to be a good representation of the impact that that business would have been experienced in the current provincial shutdown. And then just a note at the bottom of the slide, winter seasonal businesses will also be permitted to apply, and there's an alternative revenue decline comparator of they can choose between December 2019 and December 2020 or January 2020 and December 2020, and that's just a recognition that winter seasonal businesses may have a different rhythm and cadence to their business, and so we're providing some flexibility for those businesses. All right, and then slide 5 provides the list of eligible small business types. So these are ones that are subject to closures or significant restrictions under the current shutdown. As we mentioned, this is sort of the first test that businesses need to meet as part of the application process. And if they meet this plus the revenue test, they will be able to receive a minimum of $10,000 and up to $20,000. For the period of the provincial shutdown, I just wanted to note that this is also the list of businesses that will be eligible for the, excuse me, for the property tax and energy rebate. So I know we're focusing on this program, but it's just another reminder that there are other support programs in place for businesses. So if they don't meet some of the other tests, for example, around revenue or employees, there are these other rebates that you can also apply for. It's all in the same portal, which makes it much easier for businesses to be able to enter that information. And then the footnote on the bottom there, just to be clear that there are businesses that are not eligible. And those include those that were already required to close prior to the introduction of the modified stage 2 measures in October. So that's kind of the starting point for determining business eligibility. And then, of course, any essential businesses that are permitted to operate either within capacity restrictions or otherwise deemed essential are not eligible for this program. And so this is the final slide, and hopefully that gives you a good snapshot of program parameters and eligibility. And I will turn it over to, I guess, folks to take you through the portal itself.
So that was Tim Sherman, an Assistant Deputy Minister in the Ministry of Finance. Unfortunately, wasn't able to join us here today, but did want to make sure that all the latest information was provided to everybody on the webinar here today. For those of you who may have joined us before the holidays, you'll recall that we did talk about this fund, but it hadn't been open just yet. So that should provide a little bit more clarity in terms of the type of businesses that are eligible that have been impacted by the provincial shutdown, as well as the additional restrictions that were put in place. I do recognize, and I see some very individualized questions are coming in. I encourage you either to put it down in the chat box or we'll take it offline at minister.mcleod@ontario.ca. Our team is readily available to support you and put you in touch with the appropriate individuals if you have more detailed questions, as well as you may find more information and helpful information available here through our next presentation, brought to you by the Ministry of Government and Consumer Services, outlining exactly how to apply and how to take advantage of these supports. And with that, I'll turn it back to Matt to begin this presentation.
So I've heard about this new program, and I come to Ontario.ca with a beautiful background. Here, I click on English, and I see the link where it says support we are providing for small business. I want to know, as a small business, what kind of support I'm getting from the Government of Ontario. I click on this link, which takes me to a page with all details about the different programs that the Government of Ontario is having for in support of small businesses. I see here that there's a new program. I click on it, and it takes me to the page where it provides me the list of the programs that are currently available: Ontario Small Business Support Grant, Ontario Main Street Relief Grant, VP support, property tax, energy cost rebates, and what you need to apply. So the program information, what the program is, what I will get as a small business, what are the eligibility criteria, and information about the other programs as well. So I decide to apply for the Ontario Small Business Support Grant because I meet the eligibility criteria. I'll click on apply for funding. Now, when I click for apply for funding, I'm going to show you the test page because I don't want to overwhelm the live system. So it brings me to a page like this. So what you have here is that get help button, which allows me to get help from the contact center or get access to the program information guide. If I want to apply in French, I can switch to French as well. If I've already applied for the other programs, I don't need to start a new application. I can resume the application, or if I've saved the application for draft because I didn't add all the information, I can continue with the same application. Or I can apply for funding. I can start with a new application. So given that I'm a new applicant, I'm going to click on apply for funding. And it brings me to this page where I need to check the eligibility, if I can apply for these programs or not. By default, the new program is selected. I can select multiple programs if I'm interested, or I can just apply for that program. Click on check eligibility, which will again take me to a series of questions to check my eligibility for the program. The first question for the Small Business Support Grant program is, was my business required to close temporarily or significantly restrict services as a result of being subject to province-wide shutdown? I will say yes. Does your business have less than 100 employees? That's the definition for a small business. You can say yes. And is my business expecting at least a 20% revenue decline? I have a handy reference to the business guide that I can access if I want to know more information about what revenue decline means. I'll say yes, and then I click on next. Now, it says that I'm eligible for the following funding program, the Ontario Small Business Grant. I'm going to start my application. Now, when I start my application, it takes me to a series of steps. It's going to ask me to provide my business information, my contact information, information related to the new Ontario Small Business Support Grant, then review all the information I provided in the 3 steps, provide my banking information, and submit. So I come here, I provide my legal name. So I'm running a small business, Olivia's Tea Room, so I provide information. I run it as Store of Happiness. And I provide my CRA business number. Now, at this stage, I can validate the business number if I'm not sure if my business number is correct or not. If it's correct, I don't need to validate it there. If I don't know where to get the business number, we provide a handy tip. It can be found on the GST, HST return, or the employer payroll, or T2 corporate tax filing. Now, if I'm a self-proprietor who doesn't have a business number, we also provide a handy link on how to obtain the business number from the CRA website. The next step is to provide the address information. I can use address lookup postal code, or if I know the address, I can directly key it in. Okay, so I have that. My billing address is same as head office address. If it is different, I can provide that as well. Click on next. Here I'm going to provide my contact information. Nash, last name is Ottawa. Phone number and my email address. Okay, so I've provided information. I've confirmed my email address is that. It's very important to provide the correct email address, validate it again, because that's the address that is being used in terms of sending emails, confirming the receipt of your application, confirming the payment process, and if you have to come back and resume your application. I'm going to confirm that I'm the owner and I have the signing authority for the individual trust for the business. At this point, I can save a draft, which allows me to come back. If I don't have all the information, I can come back and resume the application. All this information will be saved. I don't have to provide that information again. Click on next. Now here I'm going to provide information very specific to the Ontario Small Business Support Grant. Right up front, we provide the application guide, which the users can review, the applicants can review in case they have more questions or they want to find more about the program. I need to provide my business type, and it's restaurants and bars. Now it asks me if my question is part of an enterprise or an affiliated enterprise. We have a handy tip in terms of what it means, enterprise, or they can refer to the application guide for more information. So my business is not part of an enterprise, so I'm not going to check that. Now here, if I was having a winter seasonal business, like a ski resort or any business that is associated with winter seasonal, I can say yes, and it will ask me a series of questions. If my business was in operation in the current business structure in December 2019, if I say yes, it's going to ask me for my highest monthly revenue, either in December 2019 or January 2020, given that many winter seasonal businesses don't start operating until January. For the purpose of this demo, I'll say no, my business is not a winter seasonal business. Then the next question is, was my business in operation in the current business structure in April 2019? If I say yes, it will ask me to provide number of employees, my revenue in April 2019, my revenue in April 2020. If I say no, it asks me, it prompts me to provide my business first full month of operation, the month. And based on that, it's going to ask me for the same information in terms of number of employees, what was my revenue, and in February 2020, what was my revenue in April 2020. For the purpose of the demo again, I'll say yes, it was in business structure in operation in April 2019. The number of employees were 10. The revenue was 10,000 in April 2019. In April 2020, the revenue is 2,000. Then I attest that the information I'm providing is all good. I go through the terms and conditions. I agree. I've provided now information with respect to this program. I'll say next. Now here I can review all the information I've provided, the business information, the contact information, the information related to Ontario Small Business Support Grant. So all the information has been provided. It all looks good. I can go to the next step, which is to provide my banking information. There's a sample check, copy of sample check provided, just in case people want to see where their branch, or what their branch number, institution number, and account number is located on the check. So I'll put that in here. And I'll select the institution number. Now there are many banks. We're just not limiting to the top 5. We cover a broad spectrum of banks within the province. And provide the account number. That's it. Then verify that all the information I provided is correct and click on submit. So when I click on submit, again, some terms and conditions. I'll be attesting as Manish Agrawal that all the information I'm providing is true, agree, and submit. So once I do that, my application is submitted. And so it's just a test environment. So it's saying that there's a problem because I've already used the CRA business number. So we have a check as well to ensure that the CRA business number is not used again. There's only one application that can be submitted with that application. But once I click on submit, my application will be submitted, and I'll get a notification saying that your submission, your application has been submitted. Let me quickly share the email with you on how it looks. The business will receive an email similar to this, where it says that you've applied for this program, there's your authorization number, and it's under review. And if it's approved, you will receive a subsequent confirmation email notifying that your payment has been processed. And that it takes around 2 weeks to receive your payment once the application has been approved.
So that was Manisha Agrawal with the Ministry of Government and Consumer Services, walking everyone through exactly how to apply for the small business support grants, as well as the other grants there. You would have seen the drop-down menu for the Main Street Small Business Support Fund, as well as the PPE Fund. And all that information for everyone's awareness is available at ontario.ca/COVID. That is, again, ontario.ca/COVID. It will walk you through exactly all the supports that are available and include the links to the application there so that you can submit as it relates to your business. With that, I'll turn it over to Minister MacLeod for some closing remarks. Minister?
Yeah, thanks very much, Derek, and thanks to everybody for taking the time. I'm very grateful to my sister ministries who were able to provide us with support. As you know, this ministry is quite broad. We are the largest volunteer sector in the country. We help with multiple not-for-profits through our agencies, and we are the ultimate small business sector, as you know, from our restaurants to to our small cultural attractions. I see Glenn Shackleton was joining us, and Stephen Bechta, just two people who I think prove that we are the ultimate small business sector. But we also deal with some of the biggest brands in the world, like the Toronto Raptors and Air Canada. So we wanted to make sure we compiled all of this together so that you would have access to this and we could get great supports. Being from Ottawa, I am a bit nervous that we aren't encouraging enough people to apply for these supports in our city. I do see the data and the dashboard, so I am encouraging all of you to reach out to your friends and family who may be small business owners or who may run not-for-profits or sporting organizations. That's incredibly important to me that Ottawa receives its fair share, and so I encourage you to do that. We'll continue to do that through my ministry and through my office. As a member of Cabinet, I sit on the Jobs and Recovery Committee of Cabinet, the Economic Resource Policy Committee of Cabinet, and the Essential Business List Committee of Cabinet for the COVID-19 pandemic. So your voice is always heard, and certainly my sectors are represented, but so too are all Ottawa area businesses when I'm at that table. So with that, I just wanted to encourage you, if you have any questions, to write to minister.mcleod@ontario.ca, and we will do our best to assist you. And I'm going to provide the closing remarks to MPP Gamari, who is my neighboring MPP and a strong advocate for small business at the caucus table. Goldie?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Minister. And I just want to thank you and your team for organizing this information session. You know, it's great to see so many participants here today. And just wanted to let everyone know that, you know, we are here to support. And, you know, I think we're all just really lucky to have someone like Minister McLeod here in Ottawa, because not only has she always been a strong advocate for Ottawa area businesses, but being minister and having this portfolio, I think we're really lucky to have her close by. It's definitely helpful. And so, you know, she's always made herself accessible, and just want to let everyone know that, you know, we are here and I'm happy to support the minister. Anything that anyone needs, you know, please let us know, follow up. And, you know, I look forward to seeing what else the minister is going to do to support, because I think it's important that we have a strong voice in Ottawa, and, you know, want to thank you for that.
Thanks, Goldie, and thank you all. Again, minister.mcleod@ontario.ca, and we will take any and all of your questions, and we will endeavor to get back to you in real time. So thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.